Creative Commons. Let's explore. I've got my imaginary explorer's cap on and my mindset is ready. How about you? Yes? Okay, let's get some exploration started in here. In previous videos, we have explored Creative Commons in terms of the basics and also the basics of copyright. Now we'll add some knowledge that Creative Commons licenses work within already existing copyright laws. Creative Commons licensing then is just a human speak way for a creator to provide additional guidance on the usage of their work. It's kind of like copyright plus easily understood directions on usage. Today, we also acknowledge a philosophical shift in thinking. Copyright's foundational thought includes a mindset of all rights reserved, whereas the push within Creative Commons and other open resource communities is some rights reserved. Creators want ways to share their work with more people, to fully embrace a caring and sharing sort of attitude toward their work. Okay, so let's unpack some of the particulars about Creative Commons licensing. We'll look today at the 3 layers of a license, the 4 license elements, and 6 Creative Commons licenses, and a partridge in a pear tree. No, too early for that reference. Now, when we speak of the layers of a Creative Commons license, and I'll bet when you pictured layers, you were thinking in terms of an onion, didn't you? But not me. I picture layers as the famous layers of the Smith Island cake. Yum. These 3 layers of the Creative Commons licenses are as follows. The layer 1, or the base layer, if you will, contains those terms and conditions that lawyers find enforceable within the courts of law. Layer 2 is the more understandable human speak wording, not legally enforceable, but it summarizes the legal code so that a person can really truly understand the direction. Layer 3 is the machine readable version of a Creative Commons license. It contains the summary of the key freedoms that are granted and the obligations imposed, written into a format that is for machines to read, machine readable for applications and search engines and other technological sources to look at. Now, there are some parts of Creative Commons that we have to look at in terms of our understanding of the licenses themselves. So this is some upfront information to help the understanding. CC stands for Creative Commons. Then we're looking at the part of the license that would be labeled BY, by. That is simply meaning the attribution part of the license. When we look at the licenses themselves, all of the licenses contain BY, attribution. So creators are always connected with their work. SA means share alike. It allows the creator's work to be used for any purpose, even commercially, or in a modified form. NC refers to allowing the work to be used only in non-commercial ways. And then ND for no derivatives. It allows the use of an unadapted work. So those are some terms to know as we unpack this information. Also, for clarification, for any of you legal eagles out there, we have to define the term adaptation. So here are some general rules about adaptation. You'll notice that the top of the screen here shows a lot of ways in which the information or the work is not an adaptation. So when you shift the format from digital to a physical copy, it is not an adaptation. When you fix minor issues with spelling, etc., that is not an adaptation. Reproducing it and putting works together in a collection is not an adaptation. Including an image in connection with text, as in a blog, is not an adaptation unless the photo itself is adapted. However, syncing a musical work with a moving image is an adaptation. So we have to keep these things in mind when we're talking about these Creative Commons licenses. Here's another one too. What in the world is the full definition of non-commercial use? Well, Purposes of Creative Commons defines it as one that is not primarily intended or directed towards commercial advantage or monetary compensation. It's important, though, to understand that for the purposes of Creative Commons, the definition of non-commercial really depends on the use and not necessarily, well, not ever, the user. A nonprofit or charitable organization could run afoul or run into trouble using a non-commercial licensed work. And for a nonprofit, or excuse me, for a for-profit entity, using an NC licensed work does not necessarily mean they're in violation of that license. A nonprofit, for example, cannot sell NC licensed works for a profit, and a for-profit may use an NC licensed work for non-commercial purposes. So those are two things we have to understand. Now, let's look at the licenses individually. When we see this icon, and each license has its own icon, when we see this icon here, it lets us know that the creator allows others to distribute it, to remix it, to adapt it, to build upon the work, even commercially, as long as they give credit to the original creation, the original creator. So we'll notice again that all of the licenses have this feature of attribution. This by far is the most accommodating of the licenses and allows you to disseminate and have your material disseminated and so forth in the widest way possible. This license here, Attribution Share Alike, allows a creator to indicate that people can use the work for any purpose, even if it's commercial, and even in a modified form, as long as they give attribution to the creator and make the adaptations they share available under a compatible license. So this one is the one that allows people to use the work in a modified form and also allows the adaptation as long as the adaptation is licensed under similar or compatible licenses. This is the one that indicates attribution plus non-commercial use, which allows a creator to indicate to others that they may use the work for non-commercial purposes only, and only as long as they give attribution. Of course, we've noticed that all of these require the attribution. Next, we see the Creative Commons CC-NC-SA. This is attribution, non-commercial, share alike. This allows people to use the work for non-commercial purposes only as long as they give attribution, and they make any adaptations they share with others available under the same or compatible license. Next, we see non-derivative. Now, this allows others to use unadapted work for any purpose, even if it's commercial, as long as they give attribution to the creator. So this one is rather restrictive because it does not allow any adaptation. This last one here, is the most restrictive of the Creative Commons licenses. It's attribution, non-commercial, non-derivative. It allows others to use the creator's work in an unadapted way for non-commercial purposes and only as long as they give attribution. It is, as I indicated, the most restrictive of all of the Creative Commons licenses. Still, there's a lot of flexibility within this license. Now, we mentioned earlier that Creative Commons licensing works within the existing copyright laws. By far, the purest form of openly sharing work is work that is in the public domain, where no one owns it or controls it in any way. Creative Commons licenses don't affect anything in the public domain because the licenses only apply to works that are under copyright protection. Now, that said, when a creator associated a work has dedicated the work to the public domain, when they have waived all of their rights to the work worldwide under copyright law, including all the related and neighboring rights to the extent allowed by law, they also have a way of using what they call the Creative Commons Zero, the CC0. It's intended for use by authors or holders of copyright in related works in connection with works that are still subject to those rights in one or more countries. When CC0 is applied, all the copyright is relinquished worldwide. The word worldwide always reminds me of Pitbull, Mr. Worldwide. At any rate, it's an important distinction to make when it comes to dedicating their work to the public domain by using a CC0. When that's applied, again, that is a way for an artist, a creator, to designate the rights to that work as open and free. It makes their work free, again, to the greatest extent possible, and I just love that. All right, so we're nearing the end of our exploration, but we do have a couple more paths to take. One regarding fair use and Creative Commons. Creative Commons licenses do not reduce, limit, or restrict any exceptions and limitations because of fair use, because remember, we're working within copyright law here. So the use of a work for news and teaching and parody are still in play with Creative Commons licensing. And one more path, lastly, for those, again, who are the legal eagles, while the icons for Creative Commons licensing are actually viewed as a way to spot works that carry with them the free and open sharing intent, the restrictions seen on these licenses, for example, the NC or the non-commercial, is fully enforceable under law. So Creative Commons licensing was written by lawyers to be enforceable anywhere in the world. So, for our exploration, these are my exploration notes. In other words, the sources I use to create our presentation for today. Creative Commons is a wonderful repository for further information about the licenses and many other aspects of this process. I want to thank you for accompanying me on my brief exploration of Creative Commons licenses. And I want to thank you for watching today. I'll see you in the next video. I'm off to find a Smith Island cake.